Today, we're going to make the scientific case for something you probably take for granted, maybe even fight against, a full night's sleep. We're going to explore why it's not some luxury or a sign of weakness, but an absolutely non-negotiable biological necessity. So let's open the case file and look at the evidence. So let's start with the most basic question of all. Why do we even sleep? It seems so simple, right? But this question has stumped some of the greatest minds for centuries, all the way up to Nobel Prize-winning scientists. For the longest time, science just couldn't give a solid answer. And from an evolutionary point of view, it's a complete paradox. I mean, think about it. When you're asleep, you can't find food, you can't look for a mate, you can't protect your kids. Even worse, you are completely unconscious and totally vulnerable to attack. On the surface, sleep looks like the dumbest idea evolution ever had, which can only mean one thing. The benefits must be absolutely enormous to outweigh such gigantic risks. Let's start building our case by looking at the hard evidence. And we'll begin with what happens to your brain when you don't get enough sleep. And the consequences are, well, they're pretty alarming. So, a study in Australia took a group of perfectly healthy adults and just kept them awake. Now, 19 hours of being awake, that might just sound like a long day, right? Maybe you get up at 7 a.m. and you finally hit the sack at 2 a.m. Doesn't sound too crazy. Well, the result is shocking. After just that one long day, their brains were just as impaired as someone who is legally drunk. That's right. Driving home at 2 in the morning, even without a single drop of alcohol, can be just as dangerous as getting behind the wheel when you're over the legal limit. But here's the absolute scariest part, and this quote says it all. When you're sleep-deprived, you are a terrible judge of how messed up you actually are. Your brain starts having these things called micro-sleeps, these little moments where you just check out completely, and your performance just flatlines, even though you think you're doing just fine. And it's not just your ability to think straight, your emotions go completely haywire. The amygdala, which is basically your brain's emotional gas pedal, becomes a staggering 60% more reactive when you haven't slept enough. This is exactly why a lack of sleep can make you so irrational, moody, and just quick to anger. And hey, it's not just your brain. Let's move on to the rest of the body, because the damage from sleep loss seeps into literally every single biological system you have. Check this out. This is a global experiment that's performed on 1.6 billion people twice a year, daylight savings time. In the spring, when we all lose just 1 hour of sleep, heart attacks spike by 24% the very next day. And in the fall, when we gain an hour, they drop by 21%. That is how incredibly sensitive your heart is to even the smallest changes in sleep. Trying to lose some weight while not getting enough sleep is basically sabotaging yourself. When you're sleep-deprived, your body gets incredibly stingy about giving up its fat stores. So in one study, the sleep-deprived dieters lost 70% of their weight from lean muscle. But the group that was well-rested, over half of their weight loss came from fat, and they kept their muscle. Sleep is also absolutely vital for your body's defense forces. To put it simply, not sleeping enough completely cripples your immune system. It just leaves you wide open to getting sick. And this is a truly shocking one. Your body has these amazing immune cells called natural killer cells. Think of them as your body's own little secret service agents, always on the lookout for dangerous cancer cells to destroy. After just one single night of only 4 hours of sleep, there is a staggering 70% drop in the activity of these critical cancer-fighting cells. Okay, enough with the scary stuff. We've seen all the bad things that happen when you don't sleep. But what about the motive? Why is sleep so important? Let's flip this around and look at the incredible hidden gifts that a full night of rest actually gives you. So, one of sleep's most remarkable jobs is to act as a kind of overnight therapy. During REM sleep, your brain gets to work processing difficult, even traumatic memories. But here's the magic trick. It does this while stripping away the painful, intense emotion. So it lets you hold on to the memory without having to relive the emotional pain. It's literally how we heal. Sleep also fuels our creativity in amazing ways. Just take the story of Dmitri Mendeleev. It's 1869, and this chemist is completely, utterly stuck. He's been trying to figure out how to logically organize all the known chemical elements, but he just cannot crack the puzzle. Exhausted, he finally gives up and falls asleep. And then, Just as he wrote later, the answer came to him in a dream. He literally saw the entire, elegant, logical structure of the periodic table fully formed right there in his mind. I mean, this is just a perfect example of sleep's creative genius. His dreaming brain was able to forge connections between all these different, unrelated bits of information in a way his conscious, awake brain just couldn't. And it led to one of the greatest breakthroughs in the entire history of science. So, we've seen the evidence, we've heard the arguments for the prosecution and the defense. It is time for the final verdict in the case for sleep. You know, some people love to brag about being part of the sleepless elite, claiming they can get by on just a few hours. Well, this quote from a leading sleep scientist absolutely destroys that myth. The number of people who have a rare gene that lets them truly function on 5 hours of sleep or less, rounded to a whole number, is 0. You are literally more likely to be struck by lightning. And that brings us to the final verdict. We have to stop thinking of sleep as the third pillar of health. It's not. It is the very foundation that diet and exercise are built on. And if you start weakening that foundation, the other two pillars just don't work as well, and the whole structure of your health will eventually come crumbling down. The evidence is just overwhelming. Sleep is the single most effective thing you can do to reset your brain and body health every single day. So I'll just leave you with this question. Knowing everything you know now, what's the one thing you're going to change to prioritize your sleep starting tonight?